right, hey everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Athletic Development Show. A bit of a different one today. We've got me as a guest on one of our Core Advantage online mentorship alumni, Marcus Cope, who is doing a great job as a coach, trainer, and also putting some terrific content out. And Marcus invited me on his show, and I actually quite like when I'm just a guest because I can just relax and talk about what I reckon about things. So I think you'll like it too. We dive into elements of mentoring, what athletes should focus on when they first get started, and also I think some pretty helpful advice for young coaches, as well as tell the story of sort of my story of where I came from in terms of through my sort of industry history, which I reckon might be of interest as well. So I hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.
Firstly, how are things going? How are you going yourself?
Yeah, pretty good. It's been a weird year, being a bit weird couple of years, I guess. But we're now back open for our high performance athletes, which is really nice. So our pro and national level competitors are able to be in the gym, which is great because it's one of those things where I coached from basically non-stop from 1999 to 2020. And then I've had these really long breaks from coaching. And I really missed. I didn't realize how much of the fabric of my life. I mean, it's obvious. Like if you coach 40 hours a week for 20 years, like it's a big part of your life. But I just didn't realize how much energy it gives me. And because I just got so flat when I wasn't coaching. So being around not all of our people, but at least being around some of our people has just been great. And look, the good news is, we're pretty close to our 80% double vax target. So we'll be fully open within probably, I reckon, 8 to 12 days. I'm pretty good. And other elements, we had a lot of side projects we've been working on, which are coming together. So I'm feeling about as good as I felt about things in the last 12 months, I reckon. So that's nice.
That's really awesome to hear. And I know, I think environment, as you get back to the environment, I think that's what it makes. And missing being around, as you said, your athletes or your coaches and staff as well. I think it's definitely makes it a lot more easy when you do get back to being
so
able to coach them as well.
Yeah, and look, and I've got a great team. Like I really we do our best when we're remote to stay connected, and but there's nothing that replaces that sort of just incidental hangout time when you're working with your team. Just that. I don't know, there's something really nice about that. So it's good to be good to have more of the crew back together in the coming weeks.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And obviously good to see that. Melbourne is obviously bit of freedom day today, which is awesome. Freedom Day,
yes.
It's obviously good to be able to, I think, get back to a bit of normality and keep pushing that vaccination, which would be good for them as well. I suppose going back now. I know I'm sure you've been asked this a lot on podcasts and that as well. But I suppose going back now to your journey, I'd love to hear, I suppose, how you got in the industry and maybe
sure.
starting where you started.
Yeah, so I sort of fell into things really, if I'm honest. My undergrad degree was an arts degree with a double major in politics and sociology, so not an obvious lead into to sports science and strength and conditioning. And then I kind of stuffed around a bit and did part of a marketing degree and didn't like that and dropped out. So I had one of those sort of aimless 20s where I just didn't know what my thing was. It was actually, I don't reckon I've talked about this. It was actually quite a depressing time. I remember I would get really depressed every birthday because I'm like, I'm a year older and I haven't progressed anywhere. And then, in my late 20s, I sort of was drifting around. I dropped out of uni. I didn't know what I was doing. And I decided I'm going to do a circuit breaker. I'm going to go to Japan and teach English. Just circuit breaker, see what I want to do with my life. And I got a gig, but I got the job in July and you didn't start till January. So I had this half a year not knowing what to do with it. And so I did back then this is 99. I did what was the basic point of entry then, which was just a personal training course. Did that. And I just had incredible luck. It just happened that the instructor and owner of that course was an incredible physio called Jack Dix. Absolute gun teacher. And I just happened to stumble into one of the best PT courses probably in the history of Australia. It was it had Russell Jarrett, who like Russ is a really accomplished S&C coach, and who now like teaches the level 2 ASCA course, like really good people teaching it. And so I just got really lucky, and I did that, and I sort of started training people and coaching, and it was really just as a thing that was kind of fun to do for 6 months. I had no idea it was going to be a thing for me. And it ended up kind of exploding. It turned out that it was kind of my thing. There's this thing called it's a Japanese concept called your Ikigai. Ikigai, just how it sounds, phonetic really. And it's this idea of it. Every one of us has this thing where it's a series of circles that intersect, that which you love, that which the world needs, that which the world will pay you for, that which you're good at. And if you find that's kind of your calling. And I guess I stumbled into that, and business exploded, and I ended up not going to Japan because I was like, I can't kind of turn away from this. And then I did a course. I did a nutrition course, just a weekend sort of nutrition for trainers course. And one of the participants happened to be the manager of a gym that I had trained at called Body World. And Body World's like this mecca for Australian basketball strength and conditioning, because the owner, Bruce Gray, is kind of the guru. And so I did that. She said, "Oh, you should come down and talk about training at Body World." And so I went down, had a chat to JD, and he was like, "Yep, when do you want to start?" And I started, and it was $50 a week rent.
That's really good.
But most importantly, that wasn't the cheapness of the rent that was good. It was that I said to Bruce, "Can I be your intern? Can I be your apprentice?" And so my very first exposure in my first year was learning from this master. And so I did that, and I think I did a reasonable job of, although I didn't fit the sort of the typical, massive personal trainer, huge no neck, beefy dude that was kind of the model at Body World. I did a good job of just keeping my head down, being a good operator. And then a few years later, one of my friends who was a trainer handballed me a gig. He said, "Look, I know you did the time with Bruce. I know you love basketball. I know you're interested in S&C. Do you want the S&C job with the Dandenong Rangers in the WNBL?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Yeah, I'll put in a good word for you. I'll get you in." And so I got interviewed by the captain, and she said, "Yep, you're in. I love your philosophy." Then after meeting the captain, I called up the CEO, and I was like, "Hi, I'm your new S&C." He's like, "Oh, how much do we pay you?" And I was like, "Oh, well, you pay JD this." He's like, "Cool, we'll pay you that." And we went, I had really good timing. We went, in my first 2 years, we went back-to-back national championships, the first two in the history of the club. And, if you've had a club that's never got a championship, getting one's amazing, but to go back-to-back is huge. In fact, we went 3 grand finals in a row. We lost to Lauren Jackson's Capitals in the third one. And then we got sacked. I got sacked. We all got sacked after the 4th season because we came 4th, and we were all gone. But rightly or wrongly, I got given a fair bit of credit for our low injury rate and our high performance. We won 2 championships. We went 44-6 over 2 years, and pretty much no one acquired any injuries. We had a couple of pre-existing ones we had to manage, but there were really no meaningful fresh injuries in 2 years. Awesome. And so then it was one of those things where I think it's important to emphasize, I was pretty lucky, but I have this idea that with luck, how you behave can increase your surface area for luck. So if you're really diligent, if you're a good person, if you really go above and beyond, you will be luckier. And so I treated, and it's a $5,000 a year job. Or maybe it was 6. No, it was 6. Yeah. But like not a lot of money, compared to, what I could be earning doing my own thing. But I treated it like I was being paid $100,000. Like I would go to every time an athlete had a treatment, I'd be like, "Oh, I'm coming." Like every single thing I could do to be involved. I was treating it like I was a high performance manager, but minus the delegation. So we did that, and then off the strength of that, our head coach got me a gig with the Australian Sapphires, our under 21 national team. And I got that job over a couple of people with, PhDs at the AIS, like a very credentialed people. And Gary just said, "No, you're my guy. I want you to do this." Yeah. And we had a great run, got a silver medal at the Worlds. And again, no one got injured. And then that flowed into, I won't do this blow by blow because it'll go on and on, but that flowed into Basketball Victoria work. And then I got snapped up by the, what was then the Bulleen Boomers, now the Melbourne Boomers. I've been there ever since. So 13 years I've been with that club. Yeah. A couple of years ago, I stepped down from the high performance manager because I need to focus more on core advantage. Yeah. That's sort of this. I'm speed and agility coach there. I serve on the Deacon's advisory board to the undergrad sports science course. I'm the director at Core Advantage, which keeps me pretty busy. And also helping steer our new app Metric, which is a velocity-based training app that we have developed over the last 18 months. So I guess that's it, I think. Yeah.
That's unreal.
That's a good monologue. Sorry.
No, it's all right. I love hearing people's journey into the industry and how they get into it. So I know young coaches out there and anyone that's maybe getting into the industry, I suppose it's finding that pathway for yourself, and obviously it's going to take a bit of time. And I know there's obviously hurdles that do come up along the way, but going back to build, I think obviously we spoke about mentors. I think that's huge in the industry, and for someone, I think if you can find yourself a mentor or even just hire a coach, I think is huge. I know
hiring a coach is really smart. It's a great trick. I should say too, when I look back on it now, the worst things that happened were the best things. Yeah. So I got the sack by the club, and I was just brokenhearted, probably clinically depressed for 6 months afterwards. It was just horrible getting the sack when you felt you'd done a great job, but they just cleared it. And it's just ruthless. Sports just, I remember I bumped into Dawson Kidgel, who's a great sports scientist and who I played basketball with as a junior. Yeah. And he said to me, I was maybe 3 years in, and he's like, "Have you been sacked yet?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Everyone gets sacked. You're going to get sacked." And it was good. But being sacked was the best thing ever, because if I thought I was committed prior to being sacked, that quadrupled up, because I was like, I'm never going to be put in a position where anyone can cut me. So I think that was really good. And it's like we had, the journey, which I'm happy to dive into more a bit later, if you like, about our various failures at Core Advantage. But those failures are actually the defining things that make it better now. So the hard stuff is the good stuff. Definitely. Just not at the time.
That's right. I think, for myself, obviously, just different things you do miss out on, or jobs that you think, you might want to obviously get at the time. And then I know, same again, I've missed out on a few, and I think I'd say again, I'm just really disappointed. But sometimes you think, well, maybe that isn't the right timing for you, or different things like that at the same time. So for people, obviously are listening, definitely take those on board, and obviously move on to the next one. I think is big as well.
Use it as fuel. Should be fuel.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose going back to Bruce as well, do you still keep in contact with him?
Yeah, I do.
Is he a big mentor in your?
He's a huge person in my life. He's like a second father figure. And look, we don't agree on everything. I've diverged on certain areas, but what he taught me, you just can't learn anywhere else. He taught me about just by watching, because I stayed in his gym for 15 years. Yeah. So it was like a 15-year apprenticeship. Yeah. And it was one of those things. It's like when you first learn from someone, you think it's like when you're a parent. Like when your kids are little, they think you're a god. Yeah. And when they're teenagers, they think you're a moron. And apparently, when they're in their 20s, they suddenly realize you're actually quite clever. Yeah. But there's a bit of a curve, and it's kind of like that where maybe in year 3, I didn't appreciate all the things that were very clever about what Bruce did. Yeah. But by year 15, I could really, really see them. He was great at creating that tension where he believed athletes could do more than they believed they could do. And he would pull them along by force of personality into doing things they didn't think they could handle. Yeah. And that was really good for me to see. It's that thing of it's not just about being connected. You know, like people don't want a strength and conditioning companion.
Yeah.
They want a strength and conditioning coach.
Yeah.
And he was a really good example of that. He was, you know, he had a strong personal relationship, but it was built around the idea of, I'm going to make you better than you could make yourself by yourself.
Yeah.
And so that the non-technical side of coaching, he is just a hilarious genius at it. And he's brutal. I mean, his nickname's Bruiser.
Yeah.
This real kind of soul, but would also absolutely torch his athletes. So yeah, it was great. And it was a good gym to grow up into. I mean, I grew up in a gym watching world championship level powerlifters do their thing. And so I got to learn a lot of stuff. You know, some of it was wrong, like how to do it. I got to see people destroy their bodies. I've seen like pec tears, bicep tears, patellas ripped off the bone. I've seen everything in a gym go wrong. But I've also seen stuff go right. Like I've seen the world bench press champion do like 160 or 260 at a body weight of 76 kilos. Like I think maybe it was 260, just crazy stuff. So I got to watch a lot and just kind of absorb and assimilate what I liked and then throw away what I didn't like. So it was a great environment. Also, what was really good, I should say, is it's good to put yourself in situations where you don't have huge pressure to make money early on.
Yeah.
So if your rent is $50, then you don't have to worry about taking on clients you don't like.
Yeah.
You know, so you just start to pick the people you want to work with, and that helps a lot as well.
Yeah, definitely. And as you said, it's been awesome. Like obviously getting exposed to all the different like types of training and people that are training in there. I think it's another awesome experience as a coach and a young coach to see those as well. And same again, might interest, or you might coach them later down the track too. So it's awesome to see, and I'm sure like that building that relationship I spoke about before with the client, I think that's another biggest key as well.
It's huge.
Coaches as well.
Yeah. It was really good. It was a great. I have had very good luck in my life. I've had really good people that I've bumped into, and it was great. And what was really cool too is like in '99 when I was starting, for instance, Darren Smith was who's a pro basketballer, retired now. So he was towards the end of his career. So I was starting in mine. He was towards the end of his. And now I train his daughter, Alana, who's an Olympian and who plays in the WNBA. And so that's really cool too, seeing the sort of the full circle.
Definitely. That's it. I mean, like same again, know their family and friends and stuff, and you can see them obviously up and
from little puppies into these superstars, which is
definitely
pretty cool.
I was quickly going to say, I was just going to touch on it quickly about obviously seeing all the different injuries. I was seeing that one that you shared the other day about.
Oh my God. How good was that?
Oh, that was crazy. I was like, I showed a few of the kids down there. They're just like cringing at it. I was like, look at this. And it was pretty crazy. So I haven't seen too much of that before. That
was amazing. Yeah. So if you want to see it, guys, it's on my one of my posts. Durham.McInnes, MCINNIS. And it's you see a person just tearing their ACL apart voluntarily, just not knowing what he was doing. Because what he was doing was he'd kind of mashed up a Nordic, a reverse Nordic and a sissy squat. And then that cushion was actually like amplifying the force, and it was just pushing that knee out of, into a dislocation. Amazing.
If you're not too like for people listening, if you're not too good with your stomach or anything, I wouldn't
don't watch it. Scroll right past that one. I've never had so many spew emojis in my inbox.
That's it. Now going on to, I suppose, core advantage.
Sure.
Obviously you're the co-director there as well, but I suppose how core advantage start, and obviously it's booming today at the moment, or getting it open at the moment.
Getting back to booming, it started with a really stupid idea, which was that I wanted to democratize access to high performance. So what I had this idea that, at elite level, you have access to experts who've literally spent their entire life trying to be the best they can in the world of what they do. So like if you're at Melbourne Football Club, you had Dr. Darren Burgess, my hero, there. Like you have this incredible expertise, millions of dollars worth of people per annum paid just to help you be bulletproof.
Yeah.
But at a junior level, before you've made it through the great filter, you have just at best someone's uncle, brother, or dad or mum who might be a PT. You don't necessarily have access to great experts. And so the idea was, and look, and I shouldn't take credit for it because I didn't think of it. What happened was, we had this really good run with Dandenong. And the president of the club came to me and he said, "Hey, you know how you've made our seniors bulletproof and super athletic? Do you reckon you could do that with juniors?" And I said, "Not sure, but I'll give it a go. Have you got any that you want me to have a look at?" And he sent me a young kid who was like 12, had already torn his hamstring twice, who's now a sports scientist and a coach, which is kind of cool. And he sent me a young Liz Cambridge, whose knees were so bad she couldn't walk up a flight of stairs, and a young Ash Arnott, who is now turned out to be my boss at Basketball Victoria for a while because he's now a coach. He's now moved up to the AIS as assistant coach at the Centre of Excellence. But so that was all on this awesome man who's a friend of mine who's now passed away, Charles Ryan. So he kind of got it going because what happened is I started to train one or two and they started getting really good results. And it just snowballed on me really quickly. And so I had this situation where I guess from 2005, business just really grew a lot. And I was working out of Bodyworld, and I knew I needed at some point to start my own thing. And the idea was I wanted to be so cheap that anyone can afford it. I didn't want money to be an object, so we made it really cheap. And the idea was deliver a Mercedes for the price of a day work. That was the idea. And it was noble, but it was stupid because we nearly went broke about 6 times. Because there's a reason Mercedes cost more than a day work, because there's better componentry, more time goes into them. And so look, there were times. So we got the gym up, and it was a beautiful gym, but I had completely stuffed up the design. So the design of the gym, I had this idea that we would have this Mike Boyle-esque, who's one of my favorite S&C coaches in the States.
Base it off anyone, I suppose, or like types of.
It was inspired by Mark Verstegen, who almost no one's ever heard of. It's one of the best S&C operators ever. He's the founder of Exos. Very much inspired by him, who happens to be best mates with Mike Boyle. And Mike Boyle's system is different again. And it was beautiful. Like it looked great on the floor. I did like 60 different drafts of the floor plan. Like it was great. But what I'd accidentally done is I turned this big room into this series of smaller rooms. And I remember Jacob, my business partner, and I were at the time like, it's really good. It's like you've got all these small rooms. Like we thought this was a feature, and we didn't realize it was a terrible thing, because it meant it was really hard to do a good job coaching. It wasn't flexible, and you were stuck. The biggest mistake I made was I made a facility where it was kind of built around the programming I was doing at the time. So I really liked supersetting squats and chins together, for instance, because you get the compression, you get the axial load on the back squat, and then by supersetting it with a chin, you get a bit of a decompression, and they're nice and opposite. So it's a good pairing. But we did the layout in such that if you wanted to do a row instead, you had to go to a different room. So it looked beautiful and it was very impressive for photos, but it was actually really stupid. And the business model of being cheap was also really stupid. We were cheaper than F45. And that was the thing that my staff, they basically staged an intervention and they sat me down and they said, we cannot run this business if we're going to be cheaper than F45. This is ridiculous. You need to up your prices. And so the first lockdown, Jacob and I and the team, we sat down, we talked about it, and we kind of we said, all right, how would we do this if we were starting from scratch? What would we do differently? And so we tore it up, and instead of having a class-based model, we had an open gym model. We completely tore the gym up. Very lucky that we partnered with Iron Edge, and so we got to completely redesign the gym with them. And they gave a much better design than I ever could have, which is a good point too, that don't try and design, like the idea of, it's so dumb to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars as a rookie designer on making mistakes. Like I should have just talked to them first. But so we tore the gym up, we tore the model up, and we raised our prices. And it's almost like a completely new gym. So it's much more for older athletes, less for the young ones. We still train juniors, but it's more built for people in their 20s. Look, the only thing we really didn't change was the internship. And so we've kept that the same, because that's been really good to us. And that's also fueled the online mentorship, which you did. And so that's been a great thing for our business. And Jacob has done an amazing job of that. But yeah, so Core Advantage as it stands now, so we have a more adult-centric athletic development program in-house. We run embedded academy programs where our senior coach, Hayley Campbell, runs some of our schools programs. So she'll run an S&C program for Forest Hill Academy, for Eltham College, and for some other schools. And then we have our testing division, because we've developed our own tech. So we've actually built, so we hired Jacob's brother, who's a technology genius with a degree in robotics and IT. Jacob's pitch was, he said, hire my brother, he's smarter than I am. And I was like, when does he start? So Jacob and Davey have built, we've got our own time and gate system that was proprietary, with an app that drives that, which is so good. At the moment, we're not selling it to anyone because it's such a source of competitive advantage for testing. It's such a slick system. So we've got the technology stuff bubbling away, and then the VBT stuff. So there's a few different divisions, and it's my job to kind of oversee it all and hopefully add valuable input where I can.
No, that's really awesome to hear. I know we're just going to touch on the internship now. I suppose when did that come about? And I suppose the idea of, were you thinking of maybe, like, obviously for coaches and things to obviously educate them on as much as you can, to obviously go and get experience and then obviously get other jobs at the same time?
It was probably the best strategy and decision I've ever made. And it was simply, I realized I could design a beautiful gym, even though I was actually wrong at the time. Like, it was a beautiful but stupid gym. But what I knew was that was no point having this great gym if I didn't have a great team. And it seemed to me that I'd benefited immensely from Bruce's mentoring. So I decided to put all my energy into doing the same. So I hired Rob Blinkhorn, who was one of my first hires. And Rob was an athlete who trained with me as a junior, went on to do his sports science degree, and then came full circle and came and worked. So he knew my philosophies from when he was a kid. Subsequently gone on, got his master's in strength and conditioning, got his master's in physio, and now a third master's in data analytics. And he's out of the field. So Rob, massive brain, like really big brain. And we just set about making the best internship that we could. And creating kind of a talent magnet. And the idea was, take everything it's taken me, 15 years to work out, distill that down to a 26-week curriculum that can really help people. And it was absurdly successful. Like it was a really good strategy, and like it got out of control. And I'm quite confident it pretty rapidly got to the point where I don't reckon I would have got into my own internship. So I'm sitting across. If me now was sitting across the table from me in his early 20s, I'd have been like, oh, you're a nice kid, but I'm not sure you're up for this. So that in itself was crazy. And so that went really well. And then Jacob came to me and he said, well, we've got this really good IP, because it's fundamentally an operating system it's not just knowledge, it's an operating system for how to think about your coaching. He's like, why don't I take about 6 months off coaching and turn that into a permanent online product? And so that's what he did, and he did a cracking job of it. It's way harder than you think. And Jacob, for those of you that don't know him that well, so his handle on Insta is VBT Coach. Jacob's brilliant. He's the most capable person I've ever met. he can just like, he's built his own Vertex. We've built our own laser gates. Like he can just build anything.
Yeah.
The app that we're building at the moment is incredible. I've basically never seen him say, I can't do a thing.
Yeah.
He's just not one of those people. And I'll never forget, we're 3 days into filming the internship, and he calls me up and he goes, I think I've just had a panic attack trying to film and I had to leave the gym. Because it's really hard to do that stuff well. Like it comes across so stilted. So he did that, and that was a great thing. And now we've chopped it up into a bunch of little micro courses as well. So for people that don't want to, do the whole thing, and that's been it's been very good to us. It's been great.
Yeah, I think it's a standout for you guys as well. So for any coaches out there, definitely have a look at Core Advantage Internship, and the online one I did. I highly recommend that. So jump on that, and same again as Dom just said about the little courses too. I definitely check them out. And for any for starting out or even in the industry, I think experience is a bit of a key at the time too. So try learn as much as you can. I think and I think it's a good bridging thing too. It kind of connects you with the theory a little better. Yeah.
One of the power moves, there's one of our former athletes. He bought the internship just before he bought the online mentorship just before he started first year.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And Revolution Performance, Connor, and he crushed his entire degree because he was learning it was, a lot of the answers were in there. So not in a dodgy way, but he found it very helpful. So
that's good. Cool. And previously I've had Jacob on the podcast too, so you can.
Have you? Cool. Oh, good.
So you can definitely go check that episode out and get to know Jacob a little bit more as well. Yeah,
he's great.
Awesome. I suppose going on now to athletes starting out, or even just Gen Pop clients starting out, I suppose, what do you think some of the fundamentals and basics to work on, just maybe starting out the gym or starting running for them? Yeah,
I think the basics. I really like Nick Winkelman, who's a great coach and a great thinker. And he just talks about the 3 Ps: positions, patterns, and power.
Yeah.
I think that's a really nice way to think about it, because if you don't have the positional capability, if you don't have the mobility in your ankle to get into a good dorsiflexion, you don't have the mobility in your thoracic, or perhaps the control in your lumbar core to get into a good position, everything else is going to be kind of a waste of time. And I think what often happens is people will skip straight past positions and patterns, and they'll be like, let's do power. It's like, but you've got to learn to move nicely before you can move fast.
Yeah.
So pretty much everyone I've ever coached, it's like, all right, step 1, do you have the requisite mobility to get into the right positions?
Yeah.
Do you now have step 2? Do you have the control and the patterning when you're in those positions?
Yeah.
Cool. Now let's apply some load and speed. You end up applying last rather than first. And I should be clear. It's not because I'm super clever that I've worked that out.
Yeah.
It's because I did it wrong and I saw it just go wrong a lot.
Yeah.
Like if you'd asked me in 2000 where the start point for a back squat was, my answer would have been 1 plate each side, 60 kilos. I'd be like, that's square one. Should start with that. And then, a couple of years later, I would have been like, you should start with 40 probably. Yeah. And then a couple of years later, you should start with the bar. And like a decade later, I'm like, you should start with, can you squat a broomstick, or even, probably a decade later would have been, can you switch on your glutes? So I reckon start trying to really be disciplined with every athlete or Gen Pop person at finding out where square one is. Like really finding what's the genuine start point.
Yeah, definitely. And I love those answers. I think even just like maybe assessment, I know I'm sure different coaches would do different ways. I don't know if would you guys have assessment process maybe if they do come in? Yeah, it's a little more fluid. As it used to be very regimented, it's a little more fluid, but we still typically, we want to see what's your cat camel like, because I think, 8 out of 10 people have a problematically tight thoracic. So we just want to see if that's going to be a limiting factor. Because if your thoracic is wrong, nothing else is going to be right. Like if you're all locked up in the thoracic, your shoulders aren't going to work well. You're not going to breathe well. You're not going to jump well, stand well, or squat well. So it's like, all right, we've got to look at that. And then we'll look at, a little bit of performance stuff as well, like how fast you are, what your vertical is. And it might be deep core. It might be
it's so simple, but I really like a straight push-up test.
Yeah.
It's telling someone to give you as many push-ups as they can tells you heaps that you need. Like if it can be cat camel, push-up, body weight squat, and then jumping with some video of them jumping and landing, and a bit of running, like that's huge. You often don't need that much more than that. But I think you're remiss if you don't do a bit of that. I think if you just dive straight in, because I used to do it. I used to just kind of get started. But what would happen is you get started, then like 6 weeks in, you'd be like, geez, our thoracic's really limiting us now, And I'd be like, oh, if only I had started this 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Do you know what a Gantt chart is? Have you heard of Gantt charts?
I haven't actually, no.
Okay. So they're really interesting. So my wife is an operational excellence person and an aerospace engineer. So she's got pretty big brain. She taught me about Gantt charts, and I love. It's just a project planning tool. It's basically laid out almost like a periodization model where you're going to have your various different things, but each thing will waterfall into the next thing. So if you're building a house, you have a Gantt chart for that. So builders will often have that. And there'll be certain things that are on what's called on the critical path. So if you're building a house, you can't put the walls up till you've laid the slab.
Yeah.
So if the concrete is late, the whole project gets thrown out.
Yeah.
But there are other things that are not on the critical path. So you could simultaneously do windows and doors. It's not going to matter. Or you could paint the walls, but not the door. Like this. But there's certain things that are going to stop the whole thing. And so every athletic project I'm doing, I'm thinking, okay, what's the Gantt chart?
Yeah.
What's on the critical path? What might hold me back later? So for instance, with an ACL, 9 times out of 10, the critical path is going to be their hamstring re-strengthening.
Yeah.
You'll get everything else really strong, but because often they chopped up the hammy to get a graft, often that's been a bit disrupted. Yeah. And so you want to start pretty early on getting that hammy ready. So it's not like everything else is ready. Now we just got to wait around 2 months more for the hammy to get strong enough.
Yeah.
Your Gantt charts are a great way to think about rehab and just projects in general. And I still stuff it. I'll forget to do that. And I'm like, that's on the critical path. That's totally going to slow me down. Yeah. But it's a good mental model.
Yeah, definitely. That's interesting. I've never heard of that one. So I've definitely have to look into that. And
it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Definitely.
And you can buy products like I literally for the setup of Core Advantage, where we had stupidly the first time we had like 30 different equipment suppliers.
Yeah.
And so I had to organize all of them and the tradies and all this. And so the only way I would have died if I didn't have a Gantt chart, because I could actually work out when everything was gonna arrive. So
I'll definitely have a look, and hopefully I can. Yeah, I'll definitely use it myself if I need.
Prepare to be a bit underwhelmed, because it still does look a hell of a lot like a periodization model. Like it's pretty similar. It's just got a couple little differences.
Yeah, that's it. I was going to say, like even going back to like assessment there as well. I know like things that I definitely would have done better at the start. I look back and think like, geez, like what was I kind of thinking there at the same time? But same thing, I suppose it's just that learning lesson and
learning
experience there too. But yeah, I think if you do have maybe a little assessment yourself, even if you just create on your own, maybe three different things to look at before you go into that session, or obviously when someone is starting. Yeah, I know obviously injuries play a big part in it too. So obviously things that are I don't know if they've done anything. So just making sure what there is to figure out first in those steps.
And I reckon one of the things I did wrong that we're better at now was that we probably had too long a screening. I don't think we let our screening get a bit long, and I think what really matters is getting the story from the person you're training.
Yeah.
Okay. Like really getting to understand, why are you really here? What do you want? You say like Gen Pop, everyone says they want to feel fit.
Yeah.
And then eventually they go, hey, do you reckon you could help out with this fat? They don't say that at the start. So what they should be saying in session 1 is, I want to improve body composition.
Yeah.
But they rarely say that.
Yeah.
It's like getting good at extracting people's story.
Yeah.
And learning their injury history, and then doing a quick screen. A screen's valuable, but I reckon what's more important is actually knowing them as a person a bit.
Yeah, definitely.
And just getting a read off. Okay, are they a bit more sensitive? Are they going to overplay how much something hurts, or are they a bit too brave? But just getting that read off them as well.
Yeah, that's a big part of communication skills, and I suppose just building that rapport and that trust with your athletes, and I think Gen Pop is a big key part of it as well. Awesome. Thanks again, and yeah, it's been a great chat. Thank you so much for your time today, Darren. I really do appreciate it.
Pleasure. All right. Thanks. See ya.
Okay, hope you enjoyed that episode. You'll find all the relevant show notes over at coreadvantage.com.au. Also on the website, you can find more information about our athletic development services, education, short courses, and everything else we're up to. So that's coreadvantage.com.au. Cheers, guys. See ya.